Good evening. Yes, I have made it evening. I have moved the sun. And welcome to Richard and Karl present Deep Space and Dragons. I'm Richard with newfound powers.
And I am Karl with the same powers that I found millennia ago.
Excellent. And this is our podcast where we talk about stuff, and based on our viewing metrics, we have no idea what people vibe with and what they don't, so we're just going to talk at you. And since you've made it this far, kudos. So, what's new in the Karlverse? Is it an unrelated movie review?
No, not an unrelated movie review. If our listeners knew you as Vlad, I would call this segment Vlad's Vindication.
Ooh, actually, to be fair, they now know me as Vlad because everything we say is public record on the internet. And we do, in fact, get Vlad's Vindication, which is a sick segment. Could you imagine if we had the budget for an actual late-night show? Oh, that'd be wild.
Well, okay, so last week I was talking about Dexter, which is a show that you absolutely do not care about because you've never seen it or anything.
Well,
but
yeah, fair enough.
But the reason I was talking about Dexter is because my fiance and I had started watching the prequel show, Original Sin. And as you say, most prequels don't really gain anything from being a prequel. They're better off just being their own unique show. So, firstly, minor update. I've also been reading the first book in the series called Darkly Dreaming Dexter. And it goes over to this point where Dexter's adopted father is being drugged by a nurse who is also happens to be a serial killer and kills her patients by overdoping them, over medicating them, I guess is more so. Anyway, that came straight from the book, which I thought was actually pretty interesting. But between last week and this week, the show managed to do two things which made me lose faith. Last week I was optimistic. This week I'm not. The first thing is kind of a minor annoyance, but television shows and movies often have a villain who will remove their mask for the audience.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Our pals at TV Tropes, we know there has to be a name for that, right? The number of times I've seen this.
Yeah. I mean, it's the kind of thing you don't really notice until it's been pointed out. But once it's been pointed out to you, it almost breaks the suspension of disbelief. It's like, what? So the villain, first off, he was alluded to be this police captain. And then the show felt this week that they needed to outright confirm that he was, in fact, the villain by having him go into the room with the child that had been kidnapped. And then he takes one of the child's possessions. And then for some reason he stands up. The kid's asleep because he's had fed sleeping medicine. So the kid's asleep. And for some reason, the police captain just I'm just going to take off my mask. Who am I taking it off for? Why did I have it on in the first place? No, this is for the audience. The audience needs to know for sure.
So that trope is funny, because when you do it in front of another character, it's just dumb. But I have seen it done good before. So to go to Hunter x Hunter, of all things, there's a bit where it's Hasaka's one of the spiders, and he has a shower, and in the shower he takes off his temporary fake spider tattoo and applies a new one. And I'm like, yeah, you can show the audience your face below the mask if they're going to bed or going into the shower or something, right? In a situation where it would, Char, the first time you see Char Asimov take off his mask is he's literally, man, original Gundam had an insane number of gratuitous sex scenes, shower scenes for 1970s. Not sex scenes that I'm aware of. But yeah, the trope of let the audience in on it because, I get that extra layer of suspense is fine when you don't have a character out their entire evil plan by doing it.
Well, so, I mean, the villain doesn't out his evil plan by doing it. He is alone in the room with the kidnapped child, who happens to actually be his son, because that's part of the twist. I don't know exactly what his evil plan is. I think he's just trying to create a vendetta against the cartel. But it was just broke my suspension of disbelief a little bit that it's like he took his mask off for the audience. Why?
Right, but like, you see what I mean? Where like as a writing device, like if you have Obito being all emo and he takes his mask off in front of Rin's grave so we can see his messed up face, it's a little bit different because then it's like cinematic versus. It's like it's in the description instead of being in the prose or dialogue.
But the second more egregious thing that it did, that this is where I kind of actually am losing hope. The first season of original Dexter, and also the first book, revolves around Dexter discovering that he has an older brother who also witnessed the murder of their mother.
Yeah.
So they're both psychopaths, or sociopaths, not psychopaths. Well, I mean, they're kind of psychopaths because they both end up being serial killers, but one ends up having a moral code. Well, lawful evil for sure. Dexter is straight lawful evil because he has a moral code. It just definitely involves killing people. Anyways.
I still remember when a player of mine burned down a bar and declared it was lawful good because that's the society they're from, and I realized that alignment grids don't work anymore.
Anyways, but so Dexter discovers that he has an older brother, and the older brother is leaving him cryptic messages in the forms of dead bodies.
You know,
and then,
my traumatic backstory actually mellowed me out a lot. Please continue.
Anyways, so the whole first season is kind of like he doesn't know. He's forgotten that he has an older brother, and he's trying to solve this serial killer murder that's they're clearly leaving him specifically messages.
Pause for a moment. Imagine just being able to forget you have an older brother. Just imagine that for a second.
Well, in context, Dexter's mom was hacked up with a chainsaw in a shipping container, and then the two children were just left sitting there in pools of blood from all the other people who had also been hacked up with chainsaws. It's pretty gruesome.
Oh, I believe it.
Anyway.
I'm just saying there's some days where I'm like, that would be convenient levels of repression.
But the point of the matter is that they dedicate a whole season and they make it very clear that Dexter does not remember he has an older brother.
Yeah.
So in this prequel of this episode, the father, Harry, he is investigating these the series of murders. Mostly it's been like street workers.
So pizza delivery drivers. Got it.
In any event, they decide that these three murders are the work of a serial killer, and then they follow up on a lead, and wouldn't you know it, Harry finds the older brother's psychiatric file, because one of the victims was a nurse at the psychiatric hospital where the brother went after the murder. And Dexter can't find out, and the police force can't find out that Harry has been suppressing information about the murder of their mother. And it's like, how is it such a coincidence that he managed that this random unrelated murder is another serial killer that happens to be the brother of our main character, which will also be the main plot point of the first season of the main show.
Oh, that reminds me of a meme bit where it's like someone goes like, yeah, it's like 1 in 100,000 people are serial killers. And then the person B goes, well, I feel safe because what are the mathematic odds that we're both serial killers?
In any event, the best way to describe it is that they're connecting too many dots, and the plot line that they're setting up is basically dead before it even begins. And I was just like, oh man, I had such high hopes because this police captain kidnapping his own son so that he could exact revenge on the cartel or whatever his plan actually is. That was an interesting twist that I didn't see coming, and I was hopeful that the series was going to be much more interesting. And then actually, no, they're just connecting too many dots, and everyone has met each other. Like I'm like 99% sure that Dexter and his older brother Brian are going to meet each other face to face in this like season
And
and
not
not
know it.
realize it.
Ooh. Well,
Yeah.
it reminds me of the show Gotham, which had this problem. Where when you use an IP, you need to show off the established characters. So, in Gotham, it's like, oh yeah, Kid Bruce Wayne met every future Batman villain. And I'm like, that is literally insane. None of them have their names
Insane.
yet, but he met all of them. And it's like, that seems impossible.
When it came time.
So I wouldn't say that Dexter Original Sin has gone quite that far off the deep end, but it's teetering on the edge of, like I say, connecting too many dots that don't have any payoff.
To be fair, the only group that believes they're allowed to discriminate based on the origin of people's birth are astrologists.
Huh.
And they love connecting dots for no reason. It's something that was bugging me lately, where I'm like, you take something an astrologist says, like, ooh, you better not date a Gemini, and you replace that with any diversity statement whatsoever, and that's a terrible person. Like, anyone who's openly an astrologist, you shouldn't hang out with.
Openly an astrologist?
Because they'll be like, oh, can't date a Gemini. I'm like, oh, imagine if you used a color, any color, instead of the word Gemini there.
Anyways, but so I think that ended up being a little bit longer than I hoped, but there you go. Vlad's vindication. This prequel series has taken a bad turn.
I mean, you hit it at a clean 10 minutes, and we talked more about tropes than we did about... See, the thing about this Flash movie reviews is it's you reviewing a movie I haven't seen out of nowhere, which means we can't really banter about it, right? So, like, if you phrase it in, like, oh, don't you hate XYZ trope? Boom, we have banter. Yes, I'm giving you director notes mid-episode. I'm a terrible person. I regret nothing about this chain of events.
Well, see, the other thing that's new with me, which is more interesting and up your alley, is that I've been watching the daily life of the Immortal King.
It's so good! It is unreasonably good! Next week we could do that episode. Unreasonably good. It has my favorite 3 jokes of all time.
Oh?
You'll get there when you get there.
Okay. Well, I feel like I did myself a disservice for the first season because I was casting it from my phone onto my TV, which seems like the right choice. Except the Android TV Crunchyroll app is just inferior to the Android phone app.
Yeah, it is. You're not wrong.
So the TV app won't let you skip the intro, and it won't let you skip the credits. I mean, you can just manually skip over it, but it doesn't have a clean button for it.
I will say, at one point in that show, they do a very good credits bit, but other than that, I see your struggle.
Well, my main thing is that for the entire first season, there may have been after credit scenes, and from what I've seen in the second season, these after credit scenes are like additional jokes or payoffs for things that happened in the episode, or just little snippets of information. And it's like, I don't think I missed anything like truly valuable.
But also, you missed content. Yeah, like I said, it has some surprisingly good intro and outro bits it works in once in a while. So, yeah, I unreasonably loved that show. Like, unreasonably. There's a bit where they make a ray tracing joke, and I just could not comprehend they went that direction with it.
At first, I didn't get the 3060 joke.
Such a good joke.
I've knocked over 30 of our lamps. Oh, what difference is 30 lamps going to make? And then he breaks the 3060. Anyways, so I mean, yeah, that's what's new with me. You get vindication twice actually, because
Oh, I love my
you
life
recommended the
today.
show to me, and it's actually good. And you told me Dexter Original Sin was going to be a bland prequel show, and well,
Well, because I can't make it more than a week without throwing shade at Boruto. It's like sequels and prequels are usually owned by the company and not created by the
mm,
artists. And instead of going to like good fanfic artists, they're like focus group made. And they miss
mm,
that secret sauce that like AI can't replicate. The what is this about? Right? Like
right,
if you made a prequel, you can do it, but it has to be about something. And
right,
it's hard to be about something when the story hasn't happened yet. And the only really good way you can make a prequel is to follow somebody else who didn't do a lot in the main show, so their arc can happen off screen, right?
right.
Like, for example, if you're to watch Kenshin's backstory as a prequel, which I kind of did weirdly, even though it technically goes in the series proper, it was
Mm,
sick because that's like a good story arc. But
mm,
also, prequels typically will only work if you like do a movie or like a mini arc.
right.
Like JJK Zero almost worked because we didn't know who Yuta was. It's like you did it in the chronological order. I did it in the
Mm.
intended order, and I don't know which one's better.
Well, chronological order set my expectations for what the show was vastly different.
Mhm.
I think the way that it was actually released is probably better because Yuta does so little for so long, and then when he does introduce, he's suddenly a huge main character, and I think that placing
That is
his
the most
storyline.
MCU ass decision I've ever heard, by the way. Being like, let's
Oh,
pull it. So, what's more MCU than being like, okay, Iron Man's the main character of this movie, Thor's the main character of this one. Now we're going to do a Captain America movie where Iron Man's the main character. Like, of all the MCU ass bullshit, pulling in characters because they're more popular from other media to then get a little big chunk of screen time in a different piece of media is so bad when they do it. So bad. Don't like.
uh, but yeah, no, I think that the way that they released it theatrically probably actually fits the arc better because they introduce the character and then he actually has all of his important stuff. Where the way it was written, they introduce the character and then he's just gone for like 100 chapters.
Yup. Like Gon's dad.
uh,
Uh,
but yeah, I don't. Did I ask you what's new with you there, Richard? I think I
really?
rambled on about how you got vindicated.
I mean, I prefer that. Like, yeah, if it's just an hour of me being praised for being right, sign me up. So, other than like my normal activities of going to writing workshops with authors, like my extremely busy semester I've had by going to all these writing workshops and events and things. So I keep having these like little synergy moments this semester, which
Mhm.
have been fun. So the science fiction scene in Canada, Ontario, isn't actually that many people.
Okay.
So I think I mentioned that like one of my professors, when I was doing slush pile reading, I read one of their stories for a magazine they'd sent in before they were my professor.
Okay.
So I did a reading in class today, and I look at the reading, I'm like, oh, I know this person. We've been chatting for like the last 2 years. So I send them a message, be like, look who worked their way into a curriculum. And then the person's like, oh, is so-and-so teaching it? I'm like, what, is there only like 4 people? Like, I was so amused by this notion of being like, here's your readings for this class, and me be like, I know who wrote these now. Ah, I'm going places. And just the novelty of it amused me so much.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, I'm starting to get to the point where like I know people who know people, and it's forming a circle, which is lovely. So
Right.
between that and like, I am mildly concerned I'm heading towards burnout at the speed of a cliff,
Oh.
which is what
Cliffs don't
happened.
move that fast, though.
They do if you're tumbling towards them. Actually, cliffs move very fast. The Earth is not slow.
Okay.
I think it was.
relatively speaking.
I think my brother's the one who pointed this out, and I worked it into that light novel I dropped on your desk, where it's like the Earth's moving, so if you teleport, you're just not on the Earth. Like you gotta account for that. Good luck.
Side note, I theorize that time travel is actually possible, but if you keep your same coordinates, I don't know what sort of non-relativistic coordinate system there might be in the universe, but the Earth will not be where you are now 1,000 years ago.
Right? I find that to be a bit of a trip. So I decided to try a new game that went on flash sale, because despite being an author, therefore broke, I'm like, I deserve this game. So I was playing this game, Triangle Strategy, which pivots into our main topic for today.
Right.
So Triangle Strategy is Fire Emblem by Square Enix in the style of Octopath Travelers.
Right.
And I've been playing this game and really liking it. It has a few mechanics I've never seen before. And I'm like, man, is my favorite genre, what is it? I think they call it like SJRPG, like strategy JRPG, grid-based JRPG, is actually my favorite genre of game. Except only like 3 of 4 of them ever have been good.
Right.
And I mean like series, not individual games, because most of them are just... People like to put the word tactics in front of a game and then be like, oh, this doesn't have to be as good as the thing we're making a tactics of. Like Persona 5
Right.
Tactics is like, hey, we don't have to have this well written because people already bought the Kool-Aid. It's the prequel problem / sequel problem. If people already bought the Kool-Aid, you don't have to sell them Kool-Aid, do you? But I have a completely unrelated question for you that has nothing to do with anything.
Okay.
How long does it take you to read a book?
How long does it take me to read a book?
Yeah.
In terms of hours, I believe that Dracula took me about 6 or 7 hours. That was a tough read because of the archaic language.
Mm.
Jaws took me about 5 hours. And I can check how long I've been reading Dexter.
So
I'm 64% done. I don't see where it tells me how long. It'll tell me when I'm done the book how long I've been reading it.
So,
but I think I'm only at like 2 hours for that one. It's a pretty easy read.
The reason I bring this up is that as we blitz through media content, I had an epiphany where it's like I read a lot of Canadian lit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, we should start a book club, like a Deep Space and Dragons book club, where once a month we both read the same book, then talk about it, which is basically what we do. We could highlight more weirder indie things, because I have a stack of books on my desk, and several of them I know you would enjoy.
Well, I mean, if I dedicated myself, yeah, I mean, 5 hours over the course of a month, depending on, like I say, if it's anything like Bram Stoker's Dracula, I mean,
Well, I'll give
I
you
don't
a
remember which
spoiler.
episode we talked about that on, but
Contemporary
that was a
Canadian
tough read.
lit, we're looking at like 60,000 word novella type things.
Oh,
Publishers are just like not nearly as aggressive as they used to be. Like, I read Countess the other day, and it's like, let me pull this up on my desk. It is page number, where are you? Like 250 pages?
oh boy, yeah. Like in theory, that would only take me roughly 3 hours.
Yeah, because like moderns, especially speculative fiction, they're like, okay, we're not gonna make you read Dune. We're not gonna do that because no one wants to publish Dune. Because then they would have to read and edit Dune. Just nobody's winning in that exchange.
Right.
But yeah, like, because I mean, like, I don't know, like, not really new with me, but with hypothetical politics, which I'm not going to talk about too much at length, I'm trying to do more Canadian things, like read more Canadian books, buy more Canadian stuff. My vengeance is supporting local business.
Oh, that seems to be a lot of Canadians' vengeance
Which, I mean,
for the unnamed political issues we're facing.
Yeah. The one where, like, the person's arm was definitely at a Nazi angle on a stage. If we were to bring up a protractor, he failed the Nazi test.
Well, okay, just out of curiosity, what is the angle that causes you to fail?
If you look at it and you think Hitler, that angle. I don't remember the exact angle, but it's like if it's above 70 and below 120 or something, like it's a decent chunk of the protractor. You just don't do that. Like if you go above that angle, it's hail taxi, and if you go below that angle, that's pet a dog. If you're between petting a dog and hailing a taxi, you might be doing the wrong hail.
Anyways, I mean, yeah. Let's let our viewers in on our listeners in on what we may or may not end up doing. Who knows?
I don't know.
Maybe this will get the most viewership we've ever had,
I find
and
that
we'll just have an
funny because
influx
like that
of.
would have been such a pre-episode conversation, but I'm like, no, I'm gonna just name drop Countess, check it out, good book. Not a sponsor, just a fan. But also, back to the topic of SRPGs, besides my tangent. I'm going to count that as part of what's new with me. You didn't put in a book review, so I took a full 15 minutes and we're good. So anyway, so, which is your favorite turn-based, grid-based strategy game that's not SD Gundam Gachapon Wars, because we did an entire episode on that. And
Dang it.
That is the best one.
Well, I mean, I think it was Disgaea 5 that was for the DS.
I think they also made Disgaea 1 for the DS.
Maybe. Actually, maybe Disgaea 1 would end up being my favorite. I'd have to check that out. Because I really, really liked Disgaea 5. Pretty sure it's Disgaea 5 anyways. Because it has a lot of the same spirit of Gachapon Wars. I mean, you don't deploy units by capturing bases, but the fact that you can like pick up your allies and throw them onto ledges, or try to plan how to explode the little crystals, or
I do love the totem foliage.
There's a lot of extra nuance and mechanics that you don't really find in any other series. So Disgaea 5 is pretty high up there. It almost gets overwhelming with all the things that you can do.
Yeah, so like one thing I noticed when I was going through Disgaea 5, which I think I was on PS3? I don't know. Was that like it's like each mission added a new mechanic, and they weren't small mechanics.
Right.
And I don't know if I ever hit a point where it stopped. Like the only Disgaea I think I like 100%ed was like the Disgaea 1 remake for the DS.
Mm-hmm.
And it had like 6 endings, and like one of my favorite bits in gaming where you kill a person and they come back as a robot prinny, which was established as what happens to bad people. I'm like, that's a joke. There's so many animes and shows that don't use that joke. Dragon Ball used it once where it's like, if you're interacting with spirit people and then someone dies and then they just get back up, that's just such a good joke. Like, technically in Bleach, right. It would have been amazing that just Chad dies in a fight and then just gets back up. It's like, oh yeah, right. He's dead now. Like, see how JJK I think about it. Like, what if Sorcerer dies? Shouldn't they just get back up as a curse?
I think that's kind of the point, but I don't know how long it takes them to actually become a curse after they die.
Because it'd be hilarious if they kill JoJo and then just Ghost Gojo gets back up. But I digress. Disgaea, I really enjoy that kind of humor. And I also really enjoyed their dumb Senate mechanic.
Yeah, where you like try to get things passed by the Senate, and then if they don't agree with you, then you try and beat them up, but they're super, super powerful, tough baddies.
So this triangle strategy game does something kind of similar but different. So it's more in the game. It's like a Fire Emblem, but it's pretty Fire Emblem in tone. But how it goes is for big plot decisions, your party leader has decided on democracy. So the your seven highest ranked confidants each get a vote on what the story branch you take. But you get to talk to each one and try and convince them to change their vote based on like little books and things you found in the story to get new information to try and convince them. So like the first one that happens, like my character's engaged fiance is like, I don't want to go back to my homeland. They suck. And then another party member's like, I want to go to their homeland. It's cool. So I go to that person and be like, actually, you don't want to go to her homeland because there's awesome warriors in this other place. Like, yeah, let's go fight the awesome warriors. But I got that awesome warrior fun fact by talking to a random bookshelf.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I'm like, oh, so I don't pick the story road. I have to like wheel and deal. And I kind of love that kind of mechanic
Hmm.
where it's like, yeah, no, I have to convince my team to do something because it like builds a lot of character. You know me, I
Hmm.
love when mechanics and function weave together. Like when there's like a point to knowing the personality of your party members because
Right.
that actually has like strategic value to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Although this guy has kind of the opposite problem where like main characters obviously should go on your team and make characters are like, yeah, they're literally nothing.
Yeah.
Like SD Gundam's like
Especially if
you don't even pick who your commander is.
yeah, yeah, SD Gundam. Well, so I mean, SD Gundam, Gachapon Wars, and like say Advanced Wars are they're they're very focused on the strategy element, and not so much focused on the story element.
Like to pivot from that a bit to Advanced Wars, because Advanced Wars definitely has more of a story than SD Gundam Gachapon Wars.
Well, it has more of a story,
But
but
like,
that's not really the focus of the game. That's for
well, I was
sure.
gonna say like the big difference between the two in that regard is picking your commander.
Mm,
Where I think SD Gundam, if we were to put out SD Gundam Gachapon Wars 2,
hmm.
I would definitely put in a mechanic where you can pick your commander, and like their signature units would be cheaper, or they get some kind of commander power to make like them play a little different. Like
Right.
Char, would all his red units would move an extra square or something.
That would be funny. Uh,
Because it's like I do like it's weird. If I have you in the room, the like
mhm.
versus turn-based strategy games are sweet. But I've had
Right.
this what was it called? War something or other, which is like a medieval advanced wars. I can't War
Wargroove?
yeah, but I haven't played it against anybody yet because I don't know. Like I feel like it's a hard sell, but it might just be that I'm too busy to be like, "Hey, you're my friend. Play this game with me. You don't have a choice."
Well, I mean, if it has online, I think I might own it. I'm not sure.
I think I have it on like Xbox Game Pass Pro something or other.
So yeah, cross platform might not be a thing.
Nah, it's Xbox is pretty chill about cross-platforming.
Hmm.
But I digress. So, like, between the two, what do you prefer? Like the story-based one or the versus one?
Um, well, see, I think I really enjoyed also. Um, I don't even know what it was actually called, but I think it was the fourth Fire Emblem. It came out for the Super Nintendo. Wasn't actually released in English,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I had
I don't.
had to patch it and whatnot.
Oh, that's giving me
Uh,
nostalgia. I'm gonna call that
and
one
then
Fire
hmm?
Emblem Time Skip.
Yeah, because like you're going through, and then your main commander like dies, and then there's a time skip, and you play as his kid, and any of the characters that you formed relationships with through the previous act, like they have kids that inherit their powers. And at the time, that was a a pretty interesting system that I'd never played with before. And I really enjoyed the story elements, got really attached to the characters, and then suddenly they're all dead, and I'm playing with their descendants. And it's like, that was a twist I didn't see coming. And I guess a well written story or a very compelling story um, is a great addition to a grid based strategy game. Uh, but again, when I look at Advance Wars, um, it's not a compelling story. It's
Oh, not at
just
all.
these people are trying to take over these territories. Go stop them.
So it's kind of funny. Like a spiritual successor to that Fire Emblem was Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS, which I
Mm-hmm.
have either in second or third place in my best Fire Emblem of all time rankings. But
Okay.
their twist on it was so the story was a time travel story, and the idea was once like two people got high enough friendship to like be parents, their kid would time travel back because they became part of the
Mm.
squad to like help you through this time travel plot.
Okay.
So you got to see like people interact with their fully grown descendants. But I find it
Right.
funny that like the fans put out a patch and they called it the Rainbow Patch because what they didn't like was the idea that every character by the design of the game had to be straight to create offspring.
Right.
So like, no, we could just have two characters, either gender, and then maybe they adopted, maybe they used magic, who knows, don't think about it too much. And I'm like, that's an interesting point. The heteronormity of having that mechanic. And I'm like, I wouldn't be bothered at all if two men ended at the end of it and then there was a time skip and they had a kid. I wouldn't actually think to question that. Especially like younger me would be like, oh, how did this happen? This is an affront against God. No.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that it wouldn't even cross my mind until someone points it out that it's like, oh, they must be gay. It's like, oh, why does that matter?
Or maybe they just pulled a Good Omens and just two straight. No, Good Omens is a bad example. They're actually gay. Like, I'm trying to think of one like where just like two straight guys adopt a child and raise it, because that's a trope. But I can't think of any examples off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, Sven and Train are heterosexual life partners. They don't
Perfect.
exactly adopt the child, but
No, they do.
They do have the.
They definitely. There's paperwork involved by the end of it. That is absolutely how that happened. All right, thanks for the example.
Black Cat for the win.
Oh man! And then he just went on to draw smut for the rest of his career because that paid better. It's like the reverse of the pipeline you normally see, and that's so funny to me. It's like, I wrote this awesome action series that did meh, so I started doing increasingly smutty things, and that's my full-time job now. And I'm like, oof, supply and demand. Or is this what you always wanted to do? Tough to say. But yeah, so like, one of my favorite games still, though, is Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a game worth playing 4 times, which is wild, because I don't finish that many video games, so for me to have deliberately went through a game 4 times is insane.
Right.
Because of how the structure is, you meet all the characters, like, I don't know, 30 students, but you only meet the ones that are, like, in your class.
Right.
So it's like, you go through and you're like, yeah, I'm raising my 10 squad members. And then you do the next playthrough and they're the bad guys. You're like, oh, now I feel bad for murdering poor Hubert. I know that he only had resting Snape face, but actually was a good dude.
Right.
So it's like the idea that, like, hey, on your first route, you meet these characters, and on your second route, you get to choose if you spare or murder these characters. Adds some interesting nuance for the replay value of it. So, like, I really like that one. And then a newer one came out, Fire Emblem Engaged, and it's just garbage, and whoever made that should look at that they made 3 houses and they made Engaged and just, I don't know, atone. Like, there's some sort of, like, ritual they need to do to purify their negative chi or something, because the focus group is heavy on... It was literally, you got magic rings that summoned other famous Fire Emblem characters.
Mm.
And I'm like, this game feels like a gachapon game. It doesn't have a gachapon machine, but it has that energy, and I hate it.
Oh, man. I don't know whether or not I love or hate gachapon machine-style games.
I understand them begrudgingly. And it's ironic that SD Gundam Gachapon Wars, if it was released today, would be a free game. But when you beat missions, you unlock treasure chests to then spin the Gachapon machine to get your unit. Like, that'd be so easy to turn that into a freemium game.
It sure would.
I don't even know if you'd change anything. It would just be that you only get so many plays of each difficulty a day, and you can swipe your credit card to get more.
Yeah, probably.
Just add new units, 3 new units every month. Do the math, and it costs you $500 to get them all. So another series that has a ton of the grid-based games is, we got the other SD Gundam games, which are just pure strategy ones.
Right.
Kind of capped on the PS2, but they've all been pretty good. We got Super Robot Wars, and I don't know if you've ever played a Super Robot Wars game.
I've seen you play a Super Robot Wars game. I've seen you play several actually, and they do look a lot of fun. But as much as I do like giant robots, they're pulling in some probably popular in Japan IPs that I'm just like, I don't know.
But they fixed this for you. So one of my top video games of all time, which maybe aged poorly, I don't know. So they made Super Robot Taisen Original Generation 1 and 2 for the Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
So what happened is every Super Robot Wars, they put in original characters and original mechs to kind of be like your protagonist and round out the roster, yada yada. After 20 years of doing this, they realized they could just make their own game with their original stuff.
Okay.
So they made a game that's like a serious Super Robot story while simultaneously being a parody of Super Robot stories.
Okay.
Like the main character, like you get to pick one or two characters. You can either choose like Edge Maverick, edgy guy in his edgy mech, or you can pick
Right.
kid who was good at video game, which turned out to be a government spy program to find robot pilots with new type powers.
Okay.
And like, it's like they managed to basically homage all of the series that make it up without requiring any knowledge.
Mm.
And it's just delightful because, yeah, it's just a complete story. It's like the most Super Robot War story imaginable. It's like aliens invade on their alien asteroids, so the Earth Federation and the evil Earth Federation go to war and betray people. And then occasionally demons from the Hollow Earth come up. And it's like, yeah, this is peak writing. You put it... they have the spaceship with the giant drill on it slam into a machine that's shooting mini black holes at you. And I'm like, they understand me.
Yeah, okay.
And they have like the Fire Emblem mechanics of like your players get higher support when you send them out in squads. You can move them around to pilot whatever mech you want them to, despite what the plot tells you. There's a character of talking cats that flies around and is clearly inspired by Escaflowne mech who has no sense of direction. It's just good. And it's like designed that both of them have the two campaigns of which protagonist do you start with. And I think the only difference is your protagonist gets an upgraded suit depending which version you go with. And like the first 10 missions are different.
Makes sense.
And they do my favorite thing in those games, where each mission has a bonus objective, and if you beat enough of them, you get the actual final stage.
Okay.
But the game also like scales with it, so it's like the more secret objectives you do, the harder it gets.
Mm.
But yeah, Super Robot Taisen, Original Generation, Game Boy Advance. Peak gaming. Somehow.
Well, I mean, one of the nice things about grid-based strategy games is that,
great.
well, yeah, like they're a very specific art style. Well, I guess not very specific because like Triangle Strategy and Octopath Traveler have vastly different art styles than Advance Wars, but the number of sprites in locations and like I really do like grid-based strategy games because they generally do age better than games trying to be hyper-realistic.
So on that note, you know what I didn't bring up at all? Final Fantasy Tactics, which people love, and Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced, which I love more.
Oh?
Did you ever go through Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced?
I don't think so.
So it's like the most grid-based strategy of grid-based strategy games.
Oh?
But like the plot's funny, so you get eek aside to Final Fantasy because you open a magic book.
Okay.
But sorry about that, sneezing on the podcast. But you learn that like the main villain is this kid who was paralyzed in the real world and in the Final Fantasy world wasn't, so he was trying to stop you from going home because his life was objectively better there.
Ah.
And I'm like, that's actually like profoundly dark the more you think about it.
Yeah.
It was a good one. It had like the typical Final Fantasy job system, but it also had the random bullshit system.
Oh.
So you start a fight, and this judge would show up in black armor in his judge outfit and declare a rule for the fight, and if you broke the rule, you'd get punished.
Ah.
And it was like semi-random, so like you'd be like, all right, time to start my mission. They'd be like, if you break the law and cast an ice spell, oh no, no, no. And I'd be like, ah, damn it. So one thing the better grid-based strategy games do than the other ones is it makes me sad when like Your party members just kind of get so underleveled they just end up on the roster never being used because you don't really have a reason to rotate out your team.
Mm-hmm.
Like the classic Pokemon problem.
Right.
I don't know if I've ever seen any of these games fix it. Disgaea doesn't really have that problem because you're picking your units, so you don't have like a surplus of bench warmers, really.
Mm.
Super Robot Wars, you end up with a surplus of bench warmers. There's not a whole lot you can do to prevent that. Fire Emblem fixed that in their original designs because people would just die.
Right.
Which, even in, like, what's ironic is in the later Fire Emblem games, they make death optional and don't really write it into the plot as much. And they usually have things like, oh, we can rewind X number of turns to make it feel less like, oh, you died to one unlucky hit. But I still always play with the death on, because it changes how you think strategically, or like you're not going to sacrifice a unit because you can't.
Right.
So even though, like, it's like, even though I'm playing with permadeath, almost with the intention of save scrumming, I'm still playing with the death because it changes how your brain strategizes and kind of makes you more emotionally attached or disattached to your characters. Because you can be like, I hate this guy because he keeps dying. Screw you, Tails. When I was doing my Sonic Origins run, I did a fair amount of swearing at Tails. Like, a lot of the times he'd be useful, but sometimes he would just betray me. He would just step on a button he wasn't supposed to. Or knock me off a platform by doing a thing.
Well, but okay, so, I mean, going back to Gachapon Wars and Advance Wars, the other end of the spectrum there is the characters that you're not actually attached to because they're just generic. You filled out your roster.
So some Fire Emblems are bad for that.
Yeah?
Not all Fire Emblems. It's weird. Like, Fire Emblems, usually each character only really gets, like, their introduction cutscene and then, like, 5 support conversations.
Right.
And sometimes they nail it, and sometimes they don't. And I think a lot of that comes from, like, actually using them in battle kind of, like, builds emotional attachment. Like, Fire Emblem Three Houses, every character has, like, a really nuanced backstory to the point where their passive ability is tied into their backstory. Like, one character heals when they do nothing because they're a lazy slacker who's just trying to get a government job so their dad stays off their ass.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like, there's a lot you can do to make you care about characters or don't, and that just comes down to good writing. And that's true. And I'd say, like, half the Fire Emblems I played have had legitimately good writing.
That's fair. They do actually seem to be fairly well written. And I mean, as we've spoken at length about how Gachapon Wars has zero writing, like it's just random battles, basically.
But it's funny is we still get that emotional attachment with zero writing. Like, my guy's a C that I took your base over with one guy's a C. That thing will be the legend, and I will be emotionally attached to it. Because it's like, me and you will have a hatred of Psycho Gundams no one else will truly ever understand.
Psycho Dice.
Psycho Dice. Also, why is Night Gundam so bad when it looks so cool?
Well, I mean, yeah, the Gachapon Wars does, because it's so closely tied to an IP, and you can just be like, this is my favorite unit, and I'm going to fill my roster with all of my favorite units. You do still kind of have some of that attachment, but that's more so nostalgia than actual genuine attachment.
And the thing is, they do the other SD Gundam games, which just retell the story of Gundam or do different crossovers and things. But the problem with, I'm going to just declare war on Japan here casually, a lot of Japanese game series, is that they kind of peaked at the PS2. So it's like they release an SD Gundam game like every couple of years. But they don't write new stories for them. They're just like, yeah, play through these Gundam scenarios. I'm like, listen. I've went through the plot of Zeta Gundam in 20-something games, okay? Originally, like, the first time I played one of these SD Gundam games, like, I don't know all these side stories. I'm like, yeah, I'm familiar with Shin Mazagata. It's not my first day. Yes, I'm aware Garmi Zaba has a purple Zaku. We're past this. And that's worse is then they'll add in the new series, and I'm like, those I'll even know more about?
Because you've actually like
I
watched
just
and
watched
researched
them.
them.
Because
Right.
I want to play through Iron Blood Orphans, I'm like, nothing surprising here. Because you guys aren't like writing new stories for these. So like I've only played one Gundam game ever made that had a completely 100% unique story to it. And it played more like a Final Fantasy game. It was called MS Saga The New Dawn. And it's probably the best Gundam game. That's not Gachapon Wars. It did something I've always wanted.
We love Gachapon Wars.
It did something I've always wanted a JRPG to do. The map was just Earth. So like your overworld map was just Earth.
Right.
And then like key locations that should have stuff did, like when you unlock the plane, you're like, there'll be something hidden in Japan, and you go there and find a bunker that has an original Gundam hidden in it. I'm like, this makes sense to me. Like the bonus dungeon was a giant military base under Antarctica.
That's pretty sick.
Right. And I think they turned the Sydney Opera Hall into a coliseum for Gundam battling.
That just makes sense.
Yeah. But like, my TLDR in this one is that it's a genre that I'm sure fans are so used to me complaining on our podcast because I like to complain about things. No, it's my favorite genre. Like, even though SD Gundam games would be better if they hired writers.
Right.
And the most recent Fire Emblem is a disgrace. There's just a lot of good games. Even the thing about, I need to pick up a Disgaea because it's been a while. My problem is I did several Disgaeas back to back, and then they start to get a little samesies.
Right.
But like, you know what's wild? I don't know if you ever watched Has Been Hotel or Hell of a Boss.
I have not.
But like, they're super popular right now because it's like 18 plus rate animated series about demons with all of the swearing and adult themes, and they're in hell and assassinations and gay romance and da-da-da-da. You know, like things people are into. And I'm watching this, I'm like, oh man, you guys don't realize this is just Disgaea. You have no idea.
I mean, Disgaea is a little bit more age appropriate for younger children, but yeah, there's a lot of that same
only
stuff.
because they're pretending it is. It's like Has Been Hotel literally follows Lucifer's daughter trying to redeem sinners through a hotel program. And I'm like, oh, this character's literally flown from the first Disgaea game, but is the protagonist. And it's like, yeah, you made edgy Disgaea. Good job. And it's a musical. Oh man, if they put out a new Disgaea that was just straight up a musical, that'd be amazing.
All the cutscenes are musical numbers?
All the cutscenes are musical numbers. The music bops during turns, and when you click your attack buttons, like your like movement sound effects and attacks are like in beat, it'd be amazing.
That would be a very neat game.
On a different note,
your attacks are stronger if you actually hit them at in the right rhythm.
Right? What was it? Like Paper Mario had the tapping buttons as part of the attack animations? I mean, nothing's going to beat SD Gundams. You just control your Gundams for the fights. Because it's like so much effort from such a famously non-effort franchise. It's just wild. Like, anywho, but any that we're forgetting, like the big ones that come to my mind are Fire Emblem, Super Robot Wars, Disgaea, this new triangle strategy, which I'm going to be honest, it's just Fire Emblem. But one of the first characters they give me is like my advisor, gray-haired advisor dude with glasses who beats people with a cane sword. I'm like, yeah, no, this is sick.
Well, and then you said that it has that unique mechanic where you have to convince your party members what story branch you want to go down.
So here's a couple of the cooler mechanics it has to dive in a bit. So it has the typical terrain. Characters don't equip weapons. Weapons are just things that level up with the character.
Okay.
And each character has like 5 or 6 moves. But the game cares if you back attack people, and if you flank someone, like you're on both sides of them, you get a follow-up attack.
Okay.
And every character's been a unique class, and it also kind of has like the Divinity terrain effects, like you can have one character throw oil and the other character light the oil on fire to burn them.
Oh, okay.
So like my team right now, because I'm just like starting it out, I got Sword Dude who just unlocked the when he gets hit can counter attack. That's like sword attack, range sword attack, slow down their turn order sword attack. My cleric has like heal, haste, beat with baton. I have a dude that just wields a shield that knocks people back squares. I have an archer that's range increases the higher up they are that can go for the eyes. So it's like they're giving all the
Okay.
characters that are like, feel like they be late game abilities right at the start. Like, the thief character just gets to take 2 actions,
Ah,
or can take an action and then a hide action.
okay.
So it's like, this game is like clipping along, and I'm like, oh wow. The fights are hard enough in it. So a mechanic they put in is you keep your experience when you lose a fight.
Okay.
And on hard mode, the fights are hard enough that I've lost every fight the first try and then won the rematch. Because you like
Because
have to
then you've
think-
leveled up.
Well, not just the level up, but I've had to think about it and I've fought better. The level ups aren't like making huge differences, but like it doesn't feel like you're wasting time.
Yeah, okay.
And instead of having like MP, they have like a star system where you start with 4 stars on your character, and your actions cost different stars, and you get 1 back a turn. So like the fire spell uses up 3 of them, which means only every 3 turns you get to fire the big fire spell. And it's been very good so far. Like, I really enjoyed the archer having better range, the better high ground I give them.
Right.
Or literally the shield guy having a taunt to make everyone have to attack him on his turn so you can position them so you can then shoot the fire spell at your guy and burn all the guys around him. Or like they
Yeah,
gave me an
okay.
ice mage that could just make a 1x3 row of ice so enemies have to walk around that takes 3 turns to melt. So it's like they went and sniped all the like really interesting later game mechanics from this. And they're like, yeah, we're not even going to bother with weapons because the characters are just complex. And the whole
Yeah, okay.
the whole democracy system of the more you deploy characters, the more willing they are to listen to your vote.
Ah, yeah, okay.
And the plot starts with you being in an arranged marriage, and then like that's like your first 2 characters, and I'm like, oh, it's like PG-13 Game of Thrones, where it's like being pretty serious and grounded. Like the main cause of the war is over salt mine ownership rights between 3 kingdoms,
Okay.
because salt is important.
Makes sense.
And I haven't gotten super far into it, but it's like, okay, you're telling a grounded story. Like, your main character is, like, one of the, like, 3 houses of the kingdom that are, like, the Kingsguard, basically. And, like, all sorts of, like, oh, you 2 got married because you're both expendable, so if the alliance falls through, they could just write you both off as a lost cause. Isn't that great? War breaks out. It's like, well, this sucks for both of us, doesn't it? So it's been pretty good. Also, a character got super drunk in like the 2nd chapter and passed out on the floor. And I'm like, I've never seen this in a game, and this amuses me greatly.
The only game I've ever seen someone get drunk and pass out in was Tales of... It was the one for the Super Nintendo. Tales of Fantasia.
Okay. Like, that's what amused me, because he like gave his grand designs plan, got drunk, passed out, and then later just gets shot in the back with an arrow instead.
Oh, yeah, no, that didn't happen in Tales of Fantasia. They were on a boat, and the guy was drinking and passed out.
Seems legit. But yeah, like, and then I'm thinking like some of the tactics games that didn't really come up, but things with the word tactics, like Dynasty Warriors Tactics. It's exactly what you would expect on the tin. Persona Tactics, terrible. They made this Digimon Survive game, which was half visual novel, half tactics, and the tactics part was terrible, and I was so mad.
But you liked the novel part?
So the novel part was good, but wasn't full price video game good. It was like $20 good, not $80 good. Because it's one of those choice matters where you're like, actually no. Where you just... It made it feel like you had control over who lived and died, and that's how they advertised it. Digimon Survive. Your bonds with your friends determine who gets killed throughout the story.
Right.
And then after you beat it, you realize, no, it doesn't. You actually can't change it at all. There's like 3 routes, but only one decision point at the game actually changed the story.
Huh.
It was such a bummer, because like, sick turn-based strategy Digimon game with a sick story was great, but like, it would have been better as an anime or a book, because the choices matters didn't matter. So I made so many dialogue choices for it to do nothing. When they're like, dialogue choices changes what your Digimon evolves into. Like, oh, that sounds sick. Oh no, you like literally color coded the choices into red, green, and yellow, and then that just changes your main guy's evolution, and that's it. I'm like, you guys were so close to making something sick. I don't know if
But
I
you
would have
always
been so
complain about the things. You always complain about the things you love most. So
not this one. It's like, as I said, my favorite genre paired with one of my favorite series with a cool concept and some really sick moments, honestly. I don't want to spoil it, like some straight up sick moments. And then I get through it the first ride and realize, oh, that's it. Damn it. Was a bummer. Like, it's like, I was just singing the praise of Fire Emblem Three Houses because each route unveiled more of the plot, and this one's like, you can go for all 3 endings. I'm like, your first 6 out of 8 chapters are identical. Why would I do that? And your combat engine sucks for some reason. Oh, also there's like a Bleach turn-based grid tactics game for DS that was actually really interesting.
oh,
You know how I usually say prequels suck?
uh-huh.
This one was a Bleach prequel for like Soul Society during Aizen's days when he played as like one of his squad members.
Okay.
And it was actually really interesting. Because like, yeah, no, all these characters in Bleach has a really well fleshed out flashback time period you can go around to do stuff.
Mm.
But it did have prequel problems because it's like none of the like main characters are gonna die. But a lot of characters
Right.
are gonna die, and the main characters weren't your characters.
Right.
Because you're like, oh, by the end of this prequel, my protagonist here dies, but I'm kind of fine with that if it's compelling enough.
Makes sense.
But also, I wasn't very old when I played that game, so I might just have been dumb. I just might not have been aware it was bad, because I'm like, yeah, this is sick. Another very mid one is they did like a Pokemon X Nobunaga's Conquest game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Oda Nobunaga had a shiny Rayquaza. It was a thing.
That sounds like a tongue twister.
It was interesting. Like, I'm not even going to rate that one good or bad. It was just interesting. And I think that's most of the ones that I've played that come to mind. Wargroove looks really interesting for like having a full co-op campaign. So at some point I'll probably give that another try.
Makes sense.
But do you have any closing thoughts?
Not in particular. I mean, SD Gundam Gashapon Wars is just my favorite game in the genre. But there have been quite a few good titles that I've played. Most of which you've also played, so I don't really have much to add.
Because like, oh man. It's kind of funny because a turn-based game like that you wouldn't think would be a particularly good co-op experience. But like a lot of the SD Gundam ones and things, I've played like with my brother in a sense where I've watched play and made comments. And Gachapon Wars had that sick ability that like you could literally have a second player pick up controller and fight because they put in that combat mechanic, which I was on the fence about but really enjoyed. But like, it's also one of my favorite genres to just kind of watch people play in backseat game to be like, hey, are you sure you want to do that? That's probably death. And with that, we move into our random question of the day, which I usually use 2 or 3 because I'm whimsical.
Whimsy of the day.
So this one's a good one. If you can make any animal the size of a horse, which one would you choose?
Make any animal the size of a horse.
So I want to ride around on a horse-sized capybara. Like, I want to use it as like it'd be my Bidoof, and I could take it across the lake, but realistically, that wouldn't actually be helpful. I might do something wild here, but go ahead.
I was thinking the other way around. Take something big and make it small. So like a horse-sized elephant?
Oh, that's pretty optimal. Because, like, if I want to, like, actually end world hunger, we go horse-sized chickens. They're terrifying.
Ooh, yeah, that's true.
But I think I just solved world hunger. Although we kind of have those, and they're called ostriches.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be a play mistake to increase the chicken size.
And if I made Miko the size of a horse, I would die. We call those panthers, and they kill people. Like, capybaras are super harmless, so, like, the novelty of a giant capybara would amuse me. But, I don't know. Also, hot take, probably really dumb. Ravens are extremely trainable.
Ooh.
And in theory, you could ride on a raven the size of a horse, provided, like, proportionally their flight still worked. So I'm going to ride around on a raven. And that's how I die, because I have a fear of heights and I decide to ride on the back of a bird. But it'd be a really, really cool way to die.
I wonder if that would be doable, because their bones are hollow.
Well, we're assuming the magical giant, like any animal, we have to assume magic will account for the shift in destiny, so they can be that size and not just, I want a cat the size of a horse. Kill me! My ribs can't support me and I'm in agony. Ugh. I try not to monkey paw or random questions. That's for D&D wish spells.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I'm pretty sure most animals, if you make them the size of a horse, what happens is they die.
Well, yeah, probably. But again, I was also thinking, like, blue whale the size of a horse would be kind of amusing.
I think those are dolphins.
The dolphins have the bottle. I guess I don't know much about dolphins. There's got to because I think about bottlenose dolphins.
I think I'm wrong. Like, I think I'm just being a jackass for no reason. Oh, a seahorse the size of a horse. Could you actually then, like, Aquaman that shit? Oh, that'd be dope.
Ooh, a starfish the size of a horse. That'd be kind of terrifying.
Yeah,
but
that's
also
Starro. That's a problem. You call the Justice League when you see starfish that big. That is problematic. Also, I kind of want to, like, find one of those, like, fancy toity rich people animals and make it giant so you can eat more of it, but they're only valuable because they're rare and hard to get. Like, a giant quail would be like, we're not going to eat giant quail. We're not going to eat giant duck. Why would you need a duck the size of a horse? The fat ratio would just be ruined. Yeah.
The fat ratio would be ruined.
Also, a shrimp the size of a horse would be terrifying. I'm going to make a lobster the size of a horse and people will have problems with it.
People would have problems with that size of lobster.
And our second random question. I don't know if I've asked this one. It's pretty close to one we've had before, but if the sky could rain anything but water, what would you find to be the most entertaining option?
To rain anything but water.
Mm-hmm. What would you find to be the most... I like the follow-up of what would you find to be the most entertaining option. Not like good or like... No, just you personally, what would amuse you to have it rain on people? Which is kind of a good litmus test on humanity. I think... Oh, that's such a weird hot take. So, I'm about to say something horrifying, but I might stand by it. You know, after they jacked up the price of insulin, how funny it would be if it just rained insulin? Like, if I could just pick a medication that I could just fall from the sky, like a really useful one, like, oh yeah, it just rains penicillin. The rains of penicillin just hit people, and just everyone in this region is healthier now. Except that one person with an allergy who had the worst possible death.
I was just gonna say.
It's like, I just walk outside. I feel really good. I must have had an infection. Jeremy twitching on the ground. Oh no. Just dead.
No. I'm gonna go with all the varieties of ice cream.
Oh no. That'd be so bad the next day. Oh no, not cream, not dairy, no. Dairy.
You better pack your umbrella.
Oh no, I'm not going outside. No way. I'm gonna let the city go to purge.
Yeah, but I mean, like, seeing people slip in ice cream the next day would be hilarious. Also, if you go out there with, like, a decent ice cream cone, you could, like, scoop it up. Well, meanwhile, it's falling. You don't want to scoop the stuff off of the ground.
Like, this is so temperature relevant. Like, thank God you're in Saskatchewan when this happens. Because if that happened on a hot summer day, like 20 minutes later, you've created the worst apocalypse ever. Uh, oh, that's rough. You know what'd be a really fun one, though?
Mhm.
Orange dye.
Orange dye?
Yep.
Well, why?
Because then just everyone would be Trump-colored across the entire country. I think I solved racism. Like, that's the thing, like, I want it to be something useful, but if it's a food product, it'll spoil and just be terrible.
Well, I mean, that's useful is not not what it means to be amusing, unless you're amused by utilitarianism.
My fantasy is for people to be happy, healthy, and content people, okay? My, like, escapism fantasy is going on the bus and everyone's actually having a good day. Like, you want to entertain me, put me in a room where people actually want to be there.
But see, originally I was gonna say like bouncy balls.
I thought you were going to say flubber. I don't know why I thought you were going to say flubber specifically, but, like, my brain went that direction.
Well, I mean, bouncy balls are pretty close. Flubber actually probably would eat better because it doesn't have the same mass and density as a bouncy ball. Because how far up are these bouncy balls raining from? Like that's.
I think you get to decide. So I'm going to say one last option because it would be the apocalypse. I'm ending humanity this way, but it's the best way for humanity to go. I'm going to have it rain
Okay.
Nicolas Cages. You just hear, the bees, and then just a full-grown Nicolas Cage hits someone, and then they just all start swarming, yelling movie catchphrases as they plummet down from the heavens. And none of the religions called it right.
Have you ever seen The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent?
Yep.
Oh man, the Nicolas Cage as portrayed in that movie,
One last
raining
note,
down
like,
on people.
what is there anything we could have it rain that would like fix climate change? Like, can I have it rain like just pure ozone or something?
Well,
Oh
yeah, not
wow!
really
I have it rain liquid nitrogen.
to just cool off the planet.
Well, yeah, the most effective way possible by killing everybody. I don't think mankind surviving 5 minutes of straight up liquid nitrogen rain. Like, that's problematic. Goodbye, every farm.
Yeah, I mean that's true.
Like, I don't think our buildings are doing too well. Like, liquid nitrogen is not the kind of thing that repeatedly hits something.
That's true, but you might not have that much actually hit the ground.
I don't know. Like, that's a fun physics experiment. Like, terrible wish. Fun physics experiment. Oh, speaking of, that has
And rain
nothing to
liquid
do with
nitrogen.
anything. So I was watching a Critical Role charity special last week.
Uh-huh.
They were doing like a fundraiser for the wildfires. Not to get too topical. And one of the characters gets a wish spell, and it's like, what do you wish for? And then he goes, I'm gonna summon a Tarrasque. And Matt Mercer, with all the joy in the world and glee in his voice, goes, grab my Tarrasque mini. As one of the support team runs off to this room. And I'm like, he's been waiting his entire life for this moment, and he's so happy. Nothing new, if anything. That's just a thing that made me happy this week. Anyway, I'm gonna have it rain Tarrasques.
Another apocalyptic ending to the world.
That awkward moment where you're just walking down a stroll and you feel a drop of rain on you, and then 100-foot tall, scaly, magic-resistant dinosaur falls on you.
The Tarrasque, my favorite magic commander.
Kinda, yeah. It's cool. It's not very good, but it's cool. I mean, at least your favorite one's not like PewDiePie or Optimus Prime or some other bullshit.
That's true. There's a lot of garbage.
I'm gonna
Interesting
run Rick from
designs,
The
but
Walking
garbage.
Dead. I think the Walking Dead one bugs me the most, because every Walking Dead character should be a 1/1 creature. Don't you tell me that Negan from The Walking Dead can fight a Shivanan dragon. I call bullshit. He can't even fight a regular human with mold in their mouth.
And I mean, bears are 2/2s. Like,
Yeah. That was... So, I love a good crossover and I hate a bad crossover. I know, like,
Mhm.
this is a weird tangent to end this strategy game rant episode on, but, like, I love a synergistic crossover where it feels like those characters could meet, and this crossover could happen. I hate
right.
when they just don't mesh at all. Like, for example, Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls, great crossover, 10 out of 10. Kengan Ashura, Baki the Grappler, great crossover. Ninja Turtles and Batman, works better than it should. Great crossover.
That was a pretty good one.
Well, it helps that Batman already had animal people. So, my random question for you that I invented right now is, what two things would give a sick crossover off the top of your head?
What two things would give a sick crossover off the top of my head? I think Bleach and the Daily Life of the Immortal King would be pretty peak.
I don't know if that one would work. Like,
no,
it wouldn't. Like, I'm gonna think about that because there is a lot of overlap. I think I think you'd have to do like a redesign. Like, I think my brain went power scaling, which is the wrong direction. I want a Daily Life of the Immortal King MMO. That's what I want. That power system is whack. Like, you're just gonna fly around on swords and just they decide to be Pokemon trainers one week? Peak fiction.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm thinking more and more about this crossover, and I like... It works. But I also really enjoy the part where he just, like, slaps Aizen around the world. Like, I think the bit would be so funny, because Bleach has such serious villains, and seeing them just fight a Saitama is so great. It's like...
Well, yeah. The main thing I was thinking about is the whole spiritual sword thing. It's just like...
It lines up perfectly.
Okay.
He just has a Zanpakuto.
Yeah, he just has his Zanpakuto, and he's never had to use his Bankai.
But he has one.
Almost certainly. We have no idea what it is, but he has one.
Like, here's my kind of hot take about the Daily King. Like, I know it's a comedy series, but, like, conceptually, I think it's cooler than Bleach in a lot of ways, where it's like, oh yeah, we're the sword police, and I'm Sword Regan from Mob Psycho, flying around on my sword being the special police fighting ninjas. And I'm like, you know, this is actually sick. But the lesson of that show is, when you hear someone's own theme music playing, run! But thank you all for tuning into Deep Space and Dragons. It would have, once you finish that show, we got to do that episode, because, like, it is so high up on my favorite list, and it shouldn't be. Bye.
Bye.
Go buy a local book.
A local book.
Which is ironic, because they can't buy mine. But I'm fine with that. We're at war.